and I am still thousands of dollars below the poverty line. I am homeless. I live in my car. I cannot afford to rent an apartment. I can hardly afford to live in my car. Food is expensive, and it's tough times, you know? I work 40 hours a week. I am not in an entry level position. I am in a skilled position. I make twice the federal minimum wage, and I am poor.
Imagine being under 30 years old in this housing market and economy and having no friends or family that can help support you. Talk about a nightmare right now in America, especially for the younger adults. Now, today, I finally have proof to show you that home loans are in worse shape right now than they were leading up to the global financial crisis. Qualified mortgages have absolutely failed America because regulatory agencies have removed the most important consumer protection mechanism from these qualified mortgages, which is debt to income ratio. DTI isn't even in QM guidelines anymore. And here's the thing, you guys, the major difference between today's lending and the subprime lending is now you have to triple prove your income. So income verification, whereas in 2008, we could just state our income. But even then, we still had to meet DTI thresholds during the subprime underwriting process. So today we're going to show you loans, incomes, and down payments that are far worse than 2008. And we're going to end today's video by showing you the trends in eviction data in the top 3 tracked metros with leading surges in eviction. And you guys, first though, I want to say happy Sunday and welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Obviously, this video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Mitch Vexler, how are you this Sunday evening?
Good. Those type of videos are difficult to understand how that could happen to anybody.
Yes.
But it does happen. And to that point, California has people literally living in mobile RVs that make $100,000 a year. They still can't afford housing, and that's why they're in RVs and they're just parked on the street. So it's happening everywhere, and we're going to get into why. And a lot of that has to do with the DTI ratio that we said weeks ago is complete nonsense. And we're going to explain it again right now.
Yeah, and it is very sad because absolutely no one should be working full-time, double the minimum wage, and struggling just to afford to live in their car. But let me show the viewers how mainstream media has been lying to them and how worse off the loan market is right now compared to the global financial crisis. I want to start by showing you the prices before I go into the payments. This is long-term trends. Different data providers have different PE ratios, but pretty much every single PE ratio is going to show you that we're in a double bubble. Literally from a price perspective, the bubble right now being, again, the double bubble, you see that here, is worse when we look all the way back to 2007-ish at the global financial crisis. It's worse right now. This article is going to explain the absolute bloodbath that's going on right now from an unaffordability standpoint. Now, this is Zillow. The name of this article is Understanding Affordability. There's some key ideas explored on this dashboard, and I want you guys to come back here. This is very, very interesting data. Can the middle income household afford the typical home? Once a household knows what they can afford, can they find it on the market? How important and how feasible is the down payment? And wait till you see how long it takes to actually save a down payment. It's insane. Why it matters: affordability, financial resilience, and wealth building go hand in hand. Affordable housing is a core service that enables financial resilience. Keeping housing expenses below a third of household income allows savings for emergencies and the future. The key word that this article just said is 1/3 of your income, so 33% debt to income ratio. But that's not even close to what it's at right now. But because of search frictions and large upfront costs, those with access to savings and wealth can often access more affordable options. How do we offer more people an opportunity to access secure housing? Well, we got to let the banks fail. Let's go over this first, okay? Now, what this is showing you guys is at a 10% down payment, what the debt to income ratio is for owning versus renting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this graph back to the year, all the way back here to 2005. Okay, so you guys see in 2005, during the subprime collapse, during when we could state our income, you can see that the debt to income ratio, because remember, like I said, you still had to take stated loans through the underwriting process, and they still reviewed debt to income ratio. Now, the input was fraud, right? The stated income was fraud, but they still went through the whole song and dance. If you're wondering, why does this graph show that the payment to income ratio and debt to income ratio is so much worse than when we look at, say, Black Knight? Now, the reason that is, and this is something I've been warning you about, and this is what I'm excited about, this information takes into account, and you see here, estimated property taxes and homeowners insurance. Property taxes and homeowners insurance went up way quicker this time around than it did during the global financial crisis. We can finally see that right here. So again, the peak of unaffordability during the global financial crisis was in July of 2006, where the average debt to income ratio was 31.7%. Fast forward to today, when we add the realistic cost of owning a home, again, taxes and insurance, and we're not even talking about repairs. When we add repairs, it's even worse. But you guys, it has ballooned up to 40%. And again, the reason that is because qualified mortgages have failed. And I also want to point out, look at the gap all the way to the right. Look at the gap between owning and renting. It takes about 24.8% of your income to rent, whereas again, to own right now, it's about 40% of your income, and that's at a 10% down payment. Many people move into a house with a minimum down payment. But look at this, guys. It's way worse right now from an affordability standpoint. And the reason people went into foreclosure last time and we had a subprime collapse is people stopped paying their mortgage. When we look at how much does a household need to earn to afford, and that's the key word, we're in an affordability crisis, how much do they need to afford for the typical home? And this is saying right now, you guys, that the average home needs to afford $114,423. And I would fight back against that because I'm pretty sure, depending on where you live, you need to make a lot more than that, especially if you have any debt whatsoever. Now look at the gap. So to rent, it's about $81,000, but that gap is astronomical. When we go back into the GFC, we didn't have that gap. You guys see that right here. In order to buy a house, it was still high, I guess, for back then, but you needed a family, a household needed $66,538. So you need almost, not quite, double the income that you needed in June of 2007 as you do right now. But even then, and this is why I'm saying that the demand is going to continue to crash in the housing market, it's just way better to rent from an affordability standpoint. The gap is insane. Now, when we went into recession, it reversed. It became cheaper to own versus rent. And that's when all those sub 2 and 1 rental at a time and all these people thought that there were geniuses right here because prices really only went up and it was still smarter to own versus rent. But anyone that says that right now is typically just a tyrant. Now, going back into price, this is going to cover how feasible it is for a down payment and the amount of years it would take to save only a 10% down payment plus closing costs. So it's not even a 20% down payment, Mitch. It's only a 10% down payment. Now, first, let's talk about 2006, 2007. This is saying, and this is the blue line representing closing cost and 10% down. So they're saying back in May of 2007, it took about 8.4 years to save enough money for just only a 10% down payment. When we fast forward to today, I mean, this is crazy. It has shot up to 10.8 years just to save enough money for the bare minimum to get into a house. And this is not even talking about the fact that you need money saved after you close. You do not want to go broke buying a house. This map is going to point out how many years it takes to save for the 10% down payment, plus closing costs at various parts in the country. Let's look at the West Coast, and I want to show you in San Jose, California, just to save, again, the bare minimum, 10% down. I guess the bare minimum is, say, 3.5% down, but 10% down for this data is going to take you about 21 years. So if you want to buy in San Jose and you're 18 years old, then maybe you could purchase a house when you're 40. Mitch, before I move on to asking you a couple questions, I want to listen to this young lady because she has a message to America about what she's going through in regards to the housing market.
Oh my God, I love going to work and working full time and still not being able to afford a house. I love that so much. Thank you, world.
All right, Mitch. Now, as far as the housing market, economy, income, all those important data sets, what's the worst situation that America is facing? 2008, or what is happening right now and why?
What is happening right now is infinitely worse than what happened in 2008. You think about it, just by virtue of the rule of 72 alone, the debt and the interest clock, you now have compound cumulative. And I want to point out something that I said, I don't know, 10 days ago or so about the DTI, which is a debt to income ratio. I said at that time it should be somewhere between 21 and 23 to offset the inflation that has occurred. Well, that statement is true, but I want to point something out, is that the debt to income ratio does not take into account the inflation. And that is exactly why it needs to be 21 to 23. 28 isn't even close to what's actually being done in practice. It's closer to 36 to 40. In Toronto, it's 52. These numbers are insane. And anybody who buys on these numbers, all you're doing is participating in something that's being worked against you, which is the fraud of inflation. So the DTI doesn't take inflation into account. Debt to income ratio does not take inflation into account. Isn't it interesting that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, that it doesn't take into account the decrease in the US dollar purchasing power? That's why I'm saying you're getting hit twice. You're getting hit on a federal level and you're getting hit on a state level with regard to the compound cumulative effect of the fraud. That is why the DTI should be 21 to 23, not 28. And they're not even paying attention to the 28, because the only way for anybody to keep the fraud going is by virtue of inflation and trying to inflate their way out of it. And it isn't going to work. It is going to fail. And this is the reason why everybody, you've got to file suits, if that's what it takes, against your property value. And you've got to press criminal charges against those who are participating and shoving this nonsense down your throat. They have created a fraud in violation of dozens of federal and state laws. That is what it's going to take to fix this.
Mitch, you and I both know the reason why they're not including, and by the way, that was an amazing point that you made, that inflation is not included in debt to income ratio, but we both know the reason why they don't include inflation into the numbers, because it looks like this. It looks like, the reality that mom and pop has not been making more money pretty much this entire time. I mean, everything else has gone up. The bankers have got rich, the elite have got rich, but mom and pop continue to get bankrupt.
Well, they continue to be defrauded. Let's call it what it is, right? This is just straight up fraud. The inflation is a fraud, and that is shown right there. If the incomes can't keep up, and as I've been jumping up and down on multiple videos nonstop, the bottom line is, if the income isn't there, the median household income isn't there, you can't get blood out of a stone. Can't get blood out of a stone. Everything else on top of that, what that median household income is, literally everything else attributable to that house is a straight up fraud by virtue of the inflation.
Absolutely. Now I want to show the viewers the top 3 metros with eviction surging. Eviction Lab, this is for Austin, Texas. Now Austin, Texas right now is about, as far as filings in the past year, that's 45% above average. Now the crazy thing, and this is why I'm using and starting with Austin, is the filings over the past month. So the recent filings are up 106% above the average in Austin. And look at the trajectory of these evictions right here. It's not getting any better for the citizens and residents and owners of Austin. When we go down here, Mitch, and we take a look at the filing rate, which is really surprising to me, is, the higher eviction filing rates are not downtown. They're actually in the outskirts of Austin. I found that curious, and I wondered to myself, this may be a result of the overwhelming property taxes and the fact that the landlords are passing that expense on to the renters. But in this zip code 78653, the filings for renters right now is 34.72%. So 1/3 of every rental in that zip code, eviction filing has been started. The number 2 metro is actually Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is up over the past month, 42% higher than average. As far as the last year, that's up 58% above average. Now, unfortunately, they have a lot of unavailable information now, but when we scroll down here, you can see how the trajectory is pretty much going up since June, and it started going down at the first this year, then skyrocketed up, then it's down. When we look at the filing rates for Minneapolis, it's not good, especially right up here in the north. This is saying that 19.59% of renters have had an eviction filed against them. Some of these places, Mitch, are just absolutely crazy. This is 11% here. This is 13%. When we go east, it's 23% eviction filing rate. 3 is actually Nashville, Tennessee, with the 1 month filing surge at 108% versus average. Over the last year, it's up 43%. And like Austin, you guys will notice that the trajectory of eviction filings is going up. Now, when we look at the actual filing rate, I mean, again, look at how widespread this is. I mean, it pushes out from the city. The cost of living crisis is everywhere right now. And look at this. This is insane, Mitch. Can't be right. But it's saying in this census tract, every renter has had an eviction filing against them. I don't know if that's accurate, but it says 237%. So the same homes in the same year are having an eviction filed. That's insane. But when we go over here, also, I mean, I don't know what's going on in Nashville. Look at 140% of renters. They must have multiple evictions in that same year. But when we go closer to Nashville, it's more like only, and I'm saying only, it's not really only, but 22% here, about 9% there, 14.5% there. But the bottom line, tenants can't continue to pay their landlords this outrageous amount of rent. The reason, again, is because our income did not keep pace with our rent and our mortgage payment and anything else. And Mitch, my question for you is, and you've been studying the commercial real estate crisis for a long time, and one point that you've been bringing to light is some of these commercial multifamily, for example, or even offices, they are going to fail drastically because their tenants can't afford to pay the rent that they need to cash flow. And so my question is do you see a similar trend happening right now, but in the residential market for homes? In other words, are these investors going to start going bankrupt because their cap rates no longer cash flow because renters are struggling to make their payments?
Yes, 100%. And what you just showed on that eviction lab is the equivalent of fireworks going off. So to give everybody an idea, if you've got 20% vacancy in multifamily or eviction notices, either way, you're bankrupt. Why? Because they too are over levered. Those landlords are over levered. So those people who have filed that quantity in those areas of evictions, they're not going to be your landlord much longer. Somebody else is going to step in. It's going to have to be a bank. And to put some real math to it, on an average year, let's say a 288 unit multifamily, one of mine, I would have one eviction notice in a year where we had to take it that far. We just didn't have them very often. Well, that's 0.0031%. Even if you said there were 4 in a year, for the sake of conversation, that's less than 0.04%, less than 0.5%. They're talking 20%. See the problem? They're bankrupt. So to Travis's point, anybody that's in that type of condition, you've got that amount of evictions, even that amount of notices, that just means you're not collecting the rent. You're done. You may as well hand the keys back to the bank because you're not going to make it. There's no way out of that hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to end this video by watching a TikTok, okay? And now this TikTok, you guys, is hilarious. But I want you to kind of try to look through the humor and understand what this man is really saying. It's a realtor, and he's showing someone a 600 square foot tiny house. So in other words, some people are so desperate to become a homeowner that they're throwing their money away on tiny houses. Take a look at this video.
Welcome back to another video of me showing you
houses I can't afford, I'm poor.
looking for something under 160K. Right here, baby. $159,999 in San Antonio, Texas, baby. Affordable living for everyone. Nothing is affordable for me. We talking about 1 bedroom, 2 bathrooms with 664 square feet, baby. Starting off with the driveway. This is the driveway. This can fit about 1 Toyota Camry. I'm hungry. Let's go. Wow, look at the floor. This can be the living room or the dining room. The choice is yours. The big back room. I love the mix of black and white in the kitchen. Smells like equality. Microwave for humans, microwave for the big backs. Perfect place for pets. You can also make like a mini pantry right here. Let's go. Take it.
Mitch, my first question is, especially because you are, and I'll say it, pretty good in math, we'll just say, should people start buying tiny homes so that they can finally afford to be a homeowner?
I understand the thought process extremely well for a tiny home or a cottage community or a village. The problem is when you get into it at a price per square foot, it's not the 169,000. All of a sudden it becomes, how much am I paying per square foot? And when you look at it through that lens, you're $250, $300, $350 a foot. If you wanted a house for the long haul to be a long-term owner, wait till something goes bankrupt and go buy it from the bank for $160 a foot. That's the flaw with those communities. And I've been studying this for years. I have communities in Los Angeles that I was studying that were built in the 1950s. I get it. I understand it. I've studied the actual width of the lots. I looked at the depth. I looked at what was built. I looked at the values. We've studied the hell out of it. But the bottom line is, even when you go to sell those properties, they would be non-conforming to what the market wants at that point in time in the future. So you have to be willing to say, I like it. I can afford it based on the monthly rent, even though I'm technically, or monthly payment, even though I'm technically way overpaying it for it on a price per square foot. It's not a purchase based on value. It's a purchase more based on this is what I can afford today. The problem is, just like the DTI, people do not understand what they're getting into. And it's very easy to say, well, I can afford it today. I'll worry about the future later. But if you're in at 300 a foot and you go to sell it and you're down 180 a foot, you just got shafted. What you paid 169 for is only worth 110. So you've got to be really cautious of what you're looking at. That's the bottom line. None of this is easy, but flip side of the coin, that was the A side. Here's the B side. Why is it that you are even contemplating looking at a cottage home or a tiny home or a village home? What put you in that position? Maybe best to change that position so that you're not going to get screwed in the future when you go to sell that village home or that cottage home or that tiny home.
Well said. And Mitch, can we end on this final segment? Can you tell and talk to the viewers, because I feel like I've been posting like crazy. Maybe people are tired of hearing this from me, but will you tell the viewers how you and I are creating a community designed to help mom and pop, whether they're renters or whether they're owners? And can you tell them what we've been up to for the last, I don't know how long?
There's been so many emails come our way that you start to see a pattern across the similarity with regard to how those emails are couched. Just in this last week alone, there's been 5 emails out of New Jersey. Why all of a sudden? I don't know. I just know the net effect. And 3 out of the 5 were residential. One of them actually happened to be an attorney asking if we would help that law firm with litigation support. And that law firm would be representing 2 of those residential people in a class action and one of them in a commercial. I don't know if that's going to be class action or not. That attorney gets it, but he also realizes that there's an awful lot going on under the hood with regard to the violations of law having to do with USPAP, never mind the state laws. But the bottom line is they know that the laws are being broken. They've read the violations. I told them, yes, we would do that because we're prepared for it. So on one hand, yes, on litigation support. On the other hand, the idea that Travis was able to execute, which was the seminar that he just gave, is the proof positive that in bulk, there's an awful lot of people that need the next help, the next step up with that help. How do I do the protest? It's not a question that they know that the protest is necessary. The question then becomes, how do I do it? And I need to do it now. I think we've got it figured out where we can help people in bulk. And the first step of that was with Travis. So we're trying to figure all this out and say, if we can do it in bulk, we can help a lot of people simultaneously and keep the costs down. By way of example, that attorney out of New Jersey, if he had to figure out what we've learned over the last 6 years, really, of doing everything that we're doing, he'd be well north of $1 million just to figure it out, and he still wouldn't get it because he doesn't have a background in math. So it would be very difficult. The point is, we've got the answers. We know what needs to be done. The next step is to be able to help mom and pop in bulk. And the Zoom conference that Travis had was very successful. It worked. Tad long at 3 hours, but it worked. And people got the education and they want more. And when they say they want more, what they're asking for is the next step, which is the Discord. So litigation support, how are we going to help mom and pop in bulk, and the Discord, such that those people who are participating in the seminar, they can now reach out through the Discord and help other people. So it's people helping people and doing it in bulk. And that's what we're trying to get figured out. I think we're getting pretty close.
We are.
We've also got the what I'm calling the ledger report, but it needs some polishing. But that's kind of what people were pushing for, which was the newsletter. We're working on that too.
Yeah, I mean, anything we can give mom and pop that keeps the problem and solution in front of them, the better. And you guys, a little bit patient, right? It's just me that's working on that back end system. And it takes a little bit of time. It's like learning an entire new set of technology and building a platform from scratch. One of the things that Mitch is going to be working towards that I really support and I really love is what happens when you go to protest your property taxes and they treat you like trash and they say no. What action can you take? A lot of the actions after that is only obviously criminal complaint, but suing them ain't no one can. You heard this video, ain't no one can afford that. So one of these things that we're going to be investigating and talking about is getting with your entire homeowners association, or rather everyone in your neighborhood, and coming together as a community to go after these people. That way, instead of maybe mom and pop having a $4,000 expense, it's a $40 expense. And that's what we're trying to give back to America. You guys wish us luck. Now, other than that, I'm gonna get you guys out of here. Don't forget, all of the stuff that we're talking about is in the description of this video. It is linked, you guys. Join the Real Estate Mindset Empowerment Center. There is no other center like this in the world. We help both current homeowners and renters understand what's going on in this housing market, and we do it for free. We have multiple courses. We have multiple digital downloads. You guys, please take advantage of it. Other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in yourself, in real estate, and whatever it is you're doing, we wish you luck and we hope you win.